Hi, guys. Good to see you. It's hard to see you, but I'll try my best. I need a favor before I start. One favor. I need everyone to look around the room. Just take a look. Take a look. See what you're going to see is you're going to see, from what I see, barely. Here we go. There's Khmer here. There's expats here. There's all sorts of people here. 20 years ago, this was not how this room would have looked if we had a TED Talk in Cambodia. And 20 years from now, it's going to look very, very different than that. So I'm here to talk about why and how foreigners and locals should engage and why it's so important. I'm here to talk about what I just said. I'm an American. I've been living abroad for 6 years. I've been 3 years in Australia, 2 in Korea before that, and 1 year in Hawaii before that. I've seen all sorts of things, but the most important thing I saw was that it's so important to learn from our mistakes that we're going to make when we make cultural misunderstandings with each other. And it ties into all the things we're talking about here, work and play, and Derek Sivers' speech about learning from the mistakes. Everything that we talk about can be traced back into making lots of mistakes and also learning from them. But before we get into that, we need to set the stage. This is something that should be talked in the news that you guys see, but I think it's important that we just talk about why Cambodia is becoming more international. It is, but why is that? Well, first of all, right now, the Cambodian economy is in the best shape it's ever been in. And what does that mean, right? It means that according to the head of ANZ Bank Cambodia, he thinks it's in the best shape ever. Real GDP is projected to grow 7 to 10%. Southeast Asia is a massive region. Let me go into each of these points in depth because it's very important we understand what actually is happening. The first thing is the real GDP is growing decent amount by world standards, 7 to 10%. Over the last 20 years, that would be good, but not fantastic. Right now, though, there's a worldwide, not officially yet a worldwide recession, but there will be fairly soon, people think. US is not doing well. Europe is having trouble with the euro. China and India are going very well. But besides those two countries, this is really the best place in the world to invest in. Southeast Asia is one of the most attractive growth targets in the medium to the long term. That means it's not just this year, but in the near future, the decades ahead. Everybody thinks worldwide, all the press, all the financial people, they think that Southeast Asia is the place to be. Not only that, not only is it the place to be, it's also becoming more integrated, increasingly global. And by that I mean, we heard already about the ASEAN Economic AEC that's going to come up in 2015. And we also know that the ASEAN Summit is being held here next year in 2012. That's the first time since 2002 that the ASEAN Summit actually has been held in Cambodia. So for 1 year at least, Cambodia is the middle of all of ASEAN community right now. And so what does this mean? Right? If we're an expat company, if we're a Burger King or whatever we want to do, and if we're thinking about where to grow, right? We don't know where to grow. We can't grow in the US because they're not doing well. We can't grow in Europe. Africa's too far behind. Latin America, maybe. But all these things here say Cambodia is a place where it's growing pretty quickly. The region's becoming more important. This is a place where I would pick to put people down. Not put people down, excuse me. To put people in, that sounds right. To put people down. That's saying, so here's cultural misunderstanding, right? Put people down in the US is something that you say in mob movies, right? Sopranos or something. I say, oh, I'll put you down. What I mean is I would put people to work here because this is a place that's going to grow massively. And what that means for you all is that we're global right now. We have NGOs here. We have lots of Department of State people here. But we don't yet have that many corporations here and corporate people. There's not that many expats working for the big multinational corporations yet, but there will be in the future, in the very near future. Get ready for it. And I think with that, we have cultural misunderstanding risks, but we have to be aware of it because it is not easy. So here it is. We have kind of the conclusion here. Cambodian foreigners will be working side by side. Real cultural differences, they have potentially large consequences. We'll get into that in a minute. But here we go. Here's kind of a loss factor. We can lose friends. We can lose sales. We can do all sorts of bad things. We'll talk about a little bit of those. And more importantly, we need to be aware of them. There is a potential for catastrophe between everybody, right? If there's a misunderstanding and I say, oh, I'm going to put you down, and you hear that instead of hearing what I mean to say, that's really bad, right? And we'll talk about both of these in a minute, but these are words on a page. Maybe they're not making much sense. I think a story a couple stories will make more sense. The first one I'd like to talk about is something that I knew when I was in Korea. So I was in Korea for 2 years. And when I was there, I was with the US military, but I did all sorts of stuff within the community. And one of the things I wanted to do was really get the foreigners and the Koreans united and doing things together, because there was such a massive culture gap. The first thing is in the US, bringing it back completely, and it's very hard to explain for people not from the country, but I'll give it a shot. We work way too hard. The people work 100-hour weeks, 80-hour weeks. You never really see your parents as much as you do here. So something that you do to spend more time with your father, for instance, as a son, is you go camping. And what that means is your whole family gets in a big truck, and you drive for maybe 2 hours to some random place in the woods, right? There's trees, and there's grass, and whatever there is. And you take a tent out, and you put a tent down, and you put it up, right? And you catch food. Maybe you bring food with you. We always brought food with us, right? But if you're a real camper, you actually get your food there. And so we did that. And I thought, oh, Koreans had never heard about this. Let's do this together. So we got a group of 15 people, which is really, this is one of the memories of my life. 15 people camping. And what happened with that is that half of us are foreigners, half are Koreans, so on and so forth. We get there, and of course we have food, we have everything that we have. And what ended up happening is we actually ran out of alcohol. We didn't bring that much, which is not a big deal. It's probably the least important thing that we had, because we had food, we played games, we did all these things that were just awesome. And so we ran out of alcohol. And that's not good, but at the end of it, we're still playing games and we're still pretty happy. And the Koreans are getting a little bit antsy because for whatever reason, the Koreans thought that maybe it wasn't safe, right? Because they're out in the woods for the first time, they'd never done it before, they're a little bit scared, but things were okay. Somebody leaves, goes to the bathroom or something, and then comes back and says, I saw a bear outside. And all of us, oh my God, there's a bear outside, and I've never seen a bear, right? I've been camping before, but that's a big deal. Maybe they're dangerous, we're all scared, kind of all of us now start getting in a huddle, and oh my God, we're gonna die. And this guy, he's just calm. It's like, oh yeah, I saw a bear. And we're like, what's he doing, right? Why is he just sitting there? Turns out, he said, oh, there's beer outside. Beer, meaning the stuff that you drink that we were all out of. We had no beer. And we thought he said bear. Cultural misunderstanding. The second thing that I'd like to say about cultural misunderstanding is in that trip, two Koreans, one foreigner, one Korean, they got to know each other pretty well. One guy realized he really liked one of the girls who came. So for about 6 months, he thought, oh, maybe I should date this girl, maybe not. And he really worked up to dating this girl. They went on a date. And at the end of it, the date went fantastic, apparently. And at the end of the date, he says, oh, would you like to go out with me? And this girl got so offended by this, so offended. She turned red. She's a white Korean girl, right? She turned red, just like this. She turned this shade. So imagine you're this guy, and you're saying, oh, would you like to go out with me? And the girl says, and she turns into this sheet of red. She's angry, she's like, ugh. And he says, hey, why are you acting like this? We just had a great dinner, I thought you liked me, and so on. And she says, what do you mean, get out? We just had a great dinner. What she heard is, do you want me to get out? Not go out. Cultural misunderstanding. There's a couple lessons we can take from both of these. The thing that we need to understand is that we have to ask. If something seems really strange to us, we have to ask, oh, does this mean what we think it means? Because all that had to happen was when this guy says, oh, there's a bear outside, we could have said, oh, what do you mean there's a bear outside? There's been no bears in this part of the town, right? This part of camping. If this person gets mad, what my friend did, which was so good, is he said, oh, why are you turning red? Why are you acting like this? And they could talk about it. The end of the story for that was that they did get married, and this story was retold at their wedding, and everybody just had a good time because they were a very, very good couple. More stories about the same sort of thing is that in terms of actions, this also happens. In Korea and everywhere, Americans run a lot. By running, I mean you run outside, running around. And very few people do this in Korea, but in America, if I see somebody running this way, and I'll get out of the way while they pass, right? That's a normal thing to do. I'll be walking, running, okay, I'll get out of the way so they pass. And when I'm in Korea, I'm running, right? And I'm expecting people to do the same thing, which is absolutely stupid because no one ever sees people running around, right? Only Americans. And So I'm running, and I did this a lot. And when I run in the wintertime, I know some of you may not have seen snow or ice, but it gets very slippery in snow and ice. You've seen movies, and it's cold, it freezes on the ground, and if you fall and slip, you might break your ankle. So I'm running, and I'm pretty much looking down and looking up a little bit, but looking down like this. And so I'm running, looking down, and I see somebody this way. I don't really mind, so I'm, and you can imagine what happened, just right on the ground. Or more apt, we're running and right? And that's what happened. And if I had been a little bit more aware of what was going on, I would have seen somebody and said, oh, they're probably not going to get out of the way. Let me get out of the way for them. And if she was a little bit more aware of what Americans do, she would have said, oh, here's someone running toward me. I better get out of the way. So I think we make mistakes, right? We make mistakes all the time. But the trick is to learn from them. And so the next time you see somebody running toward you, you can get out of the way and let them pass and learn from your mistakes. So what we need to do, really the takeaway from all of these, is that we need to be aware. We need to be aware of what's happening around us. We need to be aware that there's other cultures that we don't understand. And we need to be aware enough that when that stuff happens, we ask, oh, what's going on, if we can. Next thing we need to do is we need to learn from our mistakes. We've talked about that in this event many times. We'll not belabor that. And the third thing about this same idea is that we need to seek out these opportunities to learn from each other. And by that I mean we need to go on these camping trips with each other. I mean for both foreigners and for locals, so that way we can maximize our opportunities for learning. But how do we do that? We do that, well, I guess before how do we do that? It's a really good idea for a lot of different reasons. There are fringe benefits, as we say in the States. For the first thing, you make a lot of friends. When you go camping, when you go whatever it is you do, you go with a group of people that you don't know. So you do get a chance to see people in a completely different environment. You're trying new things yourself. It's good. My best friends in Korea and in Australia were all through doing activities really designed toward, for me, working with the culture. Two ways of doing this in terms of the expat community here. If you're an expat, do local clubs, do local hobbies, all those sorts of things are great. If you are a local person here and you want to meet expats, which you do, because they will bring a lot of knowledge, we'll talk about that soon too, then talk to them. When they come out, say hello. But from what I understand, and from what I saw in Korea, a lot of it was foreigners not integrating as well as they could have. Anyway, friends, you make a lot of friends by doing this, that's good. Fun is fantastic, we all love fun. It is fun to talk to people and have misunderstandings and laugh about it later. I can tell you that for a fact. And knowledge, you learn about different cultures. When Cambodia gets more integrated, it is already integrated now, I understand, but it will become even more. That knowledge, I think, will help a lot in terms of making an impact and making a difference in the world. We're all pretty young, as been mentioned before. When we grow up to that 50, 60 years old, when we're making the decisions at the top of head organizations, we're going to remember this stuff, and we're going to have to be able to use everything we learn now in that future state. Opportunities can be made, or they can be natural. And what I mean by that is, in terms of our work and play, we can definitely get these opportunities just day to day. The first one's hobbies. We mentioned that quite a bit. Whenever you're with somebody else, you can just talk to them and find out what they're like. In terms of friends, this is my personal favorite. If you have a friend who's a foreigner, if you're local, or if you're a foreigner has a friend who's local, you can ask to meet their other friends. And it's very easy. Everyone's so happy to do this. In Korea and in Australia, everyone wants to meet somebody interesting. So if you have a friend, which many of you do, I would think, never mind. When you have a friend, ask them to meet their other friends, get multiple people to meet each other. It will be good for everyone. And lastly, this is the last idea we have about this, but professional, in terms of LinkedIn, in terms of email, it is so easy to send an email to somebody that you don't know, because maybe they write back and maybe they don't. It really doesn't matter. This is more of a work thing, right? But if you're in an NGO and you're a foreigner and you say, oh, how do we sell this, or how do we help the Cambodians around me? It's so easy just to send an email or talk to a Cambodian, right? Maybe they write back and maybe they don't. But if you send 5 emails out, they don't really know who you are. So maybe one of them writes back, and you talk to that one person, and guess what? They probably know a lot more about selling whatever products you're selling to them. They probably know a lot more about how they want to be helped anyway. That will be really good for your work. The same goes the other way. Where if you're a Cambodian and you think, oh, how do I how do I become more effective at bringing people together? Well, guess what? Probably a foreigner's done that before. If you can't find a Cambodian, write them, send them an email, send them a LinkedIn request, and most of them will get back to you, and you could talk to find out how these guys did it over here. And they'd be happy to chat. I get a lot of emails. I always write back to them. And when I write other people, I hear back about half the time. And I think, as a Westerner, that's about standard. I think it'll be less for Cambodia. But you heard Kofi Annan wrote back, right? And lives change. So I think this is really important for us to do. But in summary, we need to be aware that there are cultural differences, massive cultural differences that will come up in the course of interacting with each other. That's number one. Number two is we have to learn from these mistakes. We're going to make mistakes. We have to have the courage to say, oh, this is happening. Let's learn from it and see what that means. And thirdly, we have to seek out opportunities to make those mistakes, just like Derek Sivers said, so that when we make the mistakes, we learn from them and we can reach a better place when we integrate fully. Thank you.